Everyone. I'm Kristen Daly, the Executive Director of Global Washington. And as I mentioned a minute ago, if you're joining as a participant, please go to the chat function and type in your name and affiliation, and make sure you're doing the to all panelists and attendees so we can all see each other. We should have about 40 people joining us this morning, so we've muted your microphone and disabled your camera so we can facilitate conversation better. But I'm so glad you're all joining this morning. Global Washington, most of you know this, but we've shifted all of our programming to respond to COVID-19 and what our members are asking for right now. And as you can imagine, if you're a nonprofit, many of you are asking about fundraising. It is an uncertain time. I know several nonprofits that have had to cancel their fundraising event. That's their annual event that maybe brings in 10 to 20% of your revenue for the year. And others are worried about corporate sponsors or corporate donors. So I've had a lot of questions about how to do fundraising in these uncertain times. So we at Global Washington have decided to set up webinars, either 1 or 2 a week on different topics. And again, fundraising is kind of top of our list that we're trying to get information out. We are having another webinar next Friday on the 10th at 10 o'clock, sorry, the 17th at 10 o'clock on the CARES Act, which is the stimulus package from the federal government. There's a paycheck protection program, PPP, in the CARES Act that is, nonprofits are eligible to apply, and there's been a lot of questions around that as well. So, and I know a lot of you have already applied, and now you're wondering about compliance, because there is a way that you can have loan forgiveness where the loan turns into a grant. So we're going to cover a little bit on how to apply if you haven't already, and also on compliance. So that's next Friday. For all of our future events, you can go to the Global Washington website under events. They're all going to be webinars for the foreseeable future, and you can register there. Also, please email us or even put in the chat function other topics that you want to cover. We are doing a few for funders and donors, perhaps one for board of directors of nonprofits. And for executive directors and CEO roundtables. So we're doing a variety of different types of webinars. So I do want to tell you a little bit of the logistics for today. You all do have a chat function down there. If you've just joined us, please type in your name and affiliation and make sure it's to all panelists and attendees so we know who's on this call. Pamela, our speaker, has received the registration list, so she knows in advance of who's registered for this. But we want to try to create community with everyone on this call too. Pamela Oakes is going to be presenting for about 20 minutes, and then we're going to go into Q&A because we know you all have specific questions as well. If you look at your bottom of the screen, there's a chat box and a Q&A box. When we go into Q&A, please use the Q&A box and not the chat function so that we can field those questions. I'll be moderating the Q&A, and I'll verbally ask the questions to Pamela, and she'll verbally answer them so that everyone can see that. Otherwise, we're recording this. We're not going to post it publicly, but we are going to make this available for Global Washington members. So just want to make sure you all know that it's recording. So with that, I wanted to introduce Pamela Oakes. I am so thrilled that Pamela agreed to do this with us. Pamela is an incredibly experienced professional in this field. I won't go into deeply in her back bio, but she's traveled and lived all over the world and really has a passion of this. I think her website says that at a very young age, she just had this calling to work in the social service sector and has a specific interest in global development as well. She worked at the Gates Foundation for a number of years, and then after that really realized that she has this unique knowledge of being on the funder side, which could also help nonprofits as they seek funding. So she's been a great friend of Global Washington. She's done in-person workshops for us in the past. her passion also is working with small nonprofits, which is pretty unique. I think it's harder to calibrate how you do fundraising for smaller and mid-sized nonprofits that do global work. So I think she's just going to be a perfect person to guide us through this. Pamela and I have been talking, and no one has a crystal ball that can figure all this out, right? There's no playbook for this right now, but Pamela is able to give you some advice that you can sit into your planning and really figure out what you can do in your organization. Again, she's a great resource. If you have specific questions with your organization, I encourage you to follow up with her afterward. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Pamela. And again, she's going to talk for about 20-25 minutes. Please hold your questions, even though you can type them into Q&A right now, because she might answer it throughout her presentation. So wait until about 10:30 until you start typing in your questions, and then we'll get to those. So with that, Pamela, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Kristen. Really appreciate that. And welcome, everybody. So glad that, I was going to say that you took time out of your busy schedules, but maybe not so busy if you're all sheltering in place and staying safe and healthy. But while this is, what I first want to say, that while this is a challenging time, as nonprofits, you were born for times just like this. That's why nonprofits typically start, is because there is a great challenge and nobody's meeting that challenge. And so nonprofits step up to fill in the gaps. So while there is that tendency to just, almost panic in a sense, this is what you were here for. And with that, I want to go into my presentation, and I just have a couple of quick slides. I just want to give you some things to think about and some tips on how to navigate this time that we're in. So please bear with me here while I share my screen, and you'll have to really bear with me because I am not, oh my goodness, now I can't find where my slides are. Bear with me here, hold on a moment. I apologize, I had it all set up and now, let's see here. Sorry about that, just one moment, I'll get it together here. I thought I had it all set up, ready to go, and it seemed to have disappeared on me here. So, okay, I think I've got it together now. Let's share these slides. Okay, and so what I want, let me get the slideshow started here. Okay, because what I want to start off with is that, I know it sounds corny and cheesy, but when the going gets tough, the tough get going. And this is not the time to stick your head in the sand. This is not the time to just say, just to sit back and say, well, we'll wait and see what happens. The first thing that you need to do, and if you haven't done it yet, is that you absolutely need to do this, is there needs to be a leadership response from your organization. In times of crisis, leaders need to step up. They need to be seen. You need to get out in front. And what does that mean? Well, it's part of it is just saying we're here, we're with you, and that we're all in this together. Isn't that the theme that's going around? You don't have to get out there and give any particular solutions about COVID or granting or anything. You're not out there necessarily trying to solicit money from your donors, but you are out there to say, don't worry, we've got your back. We are still in this with you. And that is so important. You will see it everywhere. I've seen TV commercials and presidents of CEOs of companies who you never ever see. They're not the face of the organization. Now they are coming on saying that we're here with you, be safe. So just giving some words of encouragement. And as leaders, that's what you need to do. You will see almost every single day, the Governor Inslee, President Trump, good or bad, he is still upfront and being seen, because that's what leaders do. In times of crisis, people are looking to leaders, and you need to step up and get out there. So get online. It doesn't have to be fancy. Nobody wants to see something that's been generated from your PR department or your communications team. They want something that's genuine and sincere and authentic from the leader. Take a video on your phone, post it on all your social media channels, and so that people see who you are. And then also you want to be able to engage people online, not just putting up posts, not just sending out a newsletter, but you actually want to engage people online. You actually want to create conversations for people to interact with your organization. The key is during this time, you need to keep your donors and keep your supporters engaged with you. This is a time when people are wondering, what's happening, what's going to happen after the fact? Are the things that we are comfortable with, will they still be around? This is not the time to hold on to the status quo. Things have changed, and so you need to change as well. And absolutely, you have to reach out to your donors. You have to reach out to them. And again, it can be similar to the way that you reach out online. That could be simply sending a note to say, we're thinking about you, hoping that you're well, hoping that you're staying safe. Give some tips for staying safe. You don't have to give tips on where to go for testing for COVID, just some simple tips. Make sure that you're washing your hands, things we all know, things that you all know to do. Stay 6 feet away, things that are being reiterated everywhere. You can just jump on that bandwagon, so to speak. But the fact that it's coming from you to your supporters says, we care about you and we're thinking about you, even when we're not asking for money. That is key, is to reach out to your donors, not to ask for money necessarily, but to let them know that you care about them, that you're thinking about them. That's what people need in times of crisis, to know that there's somebody is on their side, somebody's got their back, so to speak. And be a resource. Now, you don't have to be an expert in science to be a resource. Like I say, even if it's a resource on healthy tips, or if it's a resource, this is one thing that was helpful for me when everybody was having that run on toilet paper, which was just so crazy, right? I got an email from people to say, go to the QFC here. They've got tons of toilet paper. Be a resource like that, things that people need. Now you may say, oh, well, we are a global nonprofit. That's not what we do. I get it. But you know what? What you do today will be reflected in your support tomorrow. And what donors and supporters are going to remember are those leaders who stood out, were in the forefront, and who were there for their donors and support, right? Who are still around. You can be a resource in terms of even be a resource of telling people what is happening with the current status of your organization. People give to organizations and to nonprofits because they also share a passion for your cause. So they're interested in wanting to know, so what's going on with you guys? Are you still gonna be around? How are you doing? Be a resource, let them know, right? And again, recognize that in times of crisis, what's needed is a personal touch. We get slammed with emails all the time. A phone call will go so much further. A personal letter will go much further. And I realize that some of you have support donor bases that are huge, and there's no way that you could contact everybody unless you specifically sent out an email or some type of mass communication. I understand that, but surely in your donor base, there are some major donors or some long-term donors that it's worth your while to reach out to. If you do segmentation on your donor base, this is the time to personally reach out to all the senior citizens. They are the ones who are most scared during this time, since this disease has a devastating effect to their demographic. So if you segment your donor base, which you should be thinking about doing anyway, is reach out to the senior citizens and let them know that you're here. Is there anything that you could do to help? Now, you might not be able to help, but the fact that you offer is something. It says something. And then you have to tell people what you want. This, I find, is important in every type of fundraising situation. You never want to leave fundraising just open-ended, right? So during this difficult time, be specific. Tell people what you want. Say, you know what, we had to cancel this last event. We were raising this money in order to do this. We still need that plan. Why? Not just because we need your money, because we need to be here for you, for this cause after all of this passes, and all of this will pass. And that cause that you are so passionate about, and that cause that your donors are so passionate about, will still be there. And you want to make sure that you are going to be there. So be specific. Tell them what you want. We're trying to raise this amount of money. I get that people are thinking, well, you know, people have so much on their minds right now. I don't want to be a nuisance for them. It's true, people have a lot on their minds. But if you also notice, crisis brings out the best in people. How many stories have we all heard of anonymous donations of foods to feed health workers, or people donating masks just because people want to be of service? Crisis brings us together in a way that nothing else will. And so crisis is a time people are looking for ways to give back. Believe it or not, they really are. They're looking for ways to help. They're sitting around inside their houses, just like you, thinking, what can I do? Yes, I'm glad we're all safe, but what can I do to help somebody else? And so tell them what you want. It's not, because there is so much information out there and so much going on, the first thing at front of mind is probably not going to be your nonprofit. And so you have to bring it front of mind for them. But just because it's not front of mind is not to say that they don't care. So you need to bring that to their attention. Tell them what you want. That's the first thing, is getting out that leadership response, right? The next thing is, this is not the time to scale back. This is the time to scale up. I know that sounds counterintuitive at this time, but think about it. If funding is tight, that is not the time to postpone fundraising. If funding gets tight, you need to accelerate your fundraising. Now, accelerating your fundraising during this time of quarantine and sheltering in place is going to require some creativity, and you have to get creative. You have to do something. You have to either do a virtual event. So say, for example, if you had an event that was planned for the spring, don't just say, well, we couldn't do it. Sorry, we'll see you in the fall or see you in the winter. No, you need to immediately rethink and reimagine how to continue to do that same fundraising event. There is no guarantee what's going to happen this fall or what's going to happen this winter. You don't want to take that chance of not using this opportunity. If you already have big galas planned for late winter, move those up to fall, right? And get something going now about how you can do that type of an event. And also, what I find in times of crisis, people have a tendency, and organizations have a tendency as well, to start turning inward instead of outward. And what I mean by that is they start thinking, oh, well, what are we going to do? What's going to happen to us? And instead of thinking about your mission, about promoting the mission that your organization is all about, your mission is an outward-facing mission. It's not an inward-facing mission. It's an outward-facing mission to help people, to make a change, to impact the world. That's where your focus needs to be. Not on us, not on poor us, not on what we are going to do. Continue to promote that outward-facing mission, getting in touch with your donors, moving up accelerating your fundraising plans, and rethinking how to do it. And so, yes, that moves into the next point about creative collaborations. It is going to take some brainstorming, some creativity, and some imagination to figure out how to navigate through this time. And one thing is that I know for sure is that it is impossible to shrink and grow simultaneously. You cannot shrink and grow simultaneously. So if you're trying to grow, then that's going to require some thinking and some strategy that is different than scaling back, getting smaller, and holding on and digging in. You think about partnering for impact. So you might this time might require that you do something entirely different that you never thought of before. So say for those smaller or medium-sized organizations, this might be a time to really reach out to your network and make a collaboration with somebody who might be bigger. Maybe you could, because maybe you don't have the capacity right now to be able to continue with your fundraising on your own. Partner with an organization, and maybe together you might have a joint fundraising event. Why not, right? Have a joint fundraising event. Sure, you may not have thought about that before, but this is the time to collaborate, not be competitive, right? And so think about partnering for impact. You might also partner with organizations who might have a similar programming as you, or a similar program focus, or maybe a geographic focus, right? For organizations that are working overseas, oftentimes you're working in the same countries, possibly just even on the same continent. But if there is another organization that say, for example, is working in Kenya, working on, I don't know, working on water sanitation in Kenya. Maybe you're working in Kenya, but you're working on building schools in Kenya. Why don't you guys collaborate and make something happen so that both of your work gets highlighted, but it might be something different than you've done before, but you're helping each other out in order to still impact the country of Kenya. That's why you're here, to make a difference in Kenya. And so you can still do that partnering with other organizations, and recognizing that sharing is caring. Share your resources. This is not the time to just hold on. This is what I love about nonprofits. I have a Facebook group, and I call my Facebook group Nonprofit Warriors, because nonprofits are the warriors on the front lines doing the work that maybe nobody had the time to do or wanted to do or thought could be done. They are there ensuring that lives are saved, lives are changed, and life is better for many, many populations around the world. That work still has to go on. And we all know, we can all imagine that at the end of all this, there may be organizations out there who do not survive this crisis. As part of the nonprofit community, we need to ensure that all of us survive this crisis, because the need for your work, that cause will still be there even after this crisis. So when I say sharing is caring, maybe this is time for you to maybe share some volunteer help for your partner organization or for another community organization. Now, obviously, we cannot meet personally, but maybe right now for those bigger organizations, maybe you have a PR team or a communications team or a marketing team that's kind of sitting around right now, sitting at home. How beautiful would it be to just share those resources with another organization who does not have that capacity? And that other organization, then think of how you can be reciprocal and how you can give back to that organization. Maybe when the time comes, maybe you can offer some of your volunteers to help them in their fundraising event or something. But think of how we can bolster each other. That is going to be so key. Those creative collaborations, that's going to be the key to who survives this and who maybe doesn't. And again, this is when you're thinking about how does a creative collaboration help with my fundraising? Again, what you do today will be reflected in your support tomorrow. Collaborating with another organization also opens you up to a whole new database of supporters who might not even be on your radar, right? Don't be so narrow and myopic in your focus and your thinking to just look at what you're trying to hang on to. You have to think of something different. This crazy times calls for some crazy actions. You might have to do things you never thought you would have to do before, or that would even be, that you would think would even benefit you before. But this is the time to do that, right? This is the time to do that. And so another thing that you can do, you know, in real estate terms, they say the best real estate is all about location, location, location. When it comes to nonprofits, it's all about diversify, diversify, diversify. When I am working with nonprofits, this is the one thing that I try to drive home as much as possible. You need to have diverse revenue streams coming in. If you don't, that, and even in the good times, that can be a sign of death, right? You need to not only just have a plan B, you need a plan C, D, E, whatever it's gonna take. You have to diversify your revenue streams. And what I find for most nonprofits, once they get going, they immediately think of grants. Well, how do I just find more grants? Statistically, grants should really only be about 30% of your annual revenue anyway. Why? Because grants go away. Grants aren't always there, and there's no guarantee. True enough, there can be more money in grants. And so I think that's why the incentive, why people just think, oh, I just need to get this grant. I just need to get this grant. But think of other ways to bring in money into your nonprofit. And there are many. The key one that you should be doing, not just in the good times, but especially now, is work on expanding your donor base, right? Volunteer individual donations can be huge, especially in times of crisis. Because again, people are looking for ways to give back. How can we help? How can we help support you during this difficult time? Work on expanding your donor base. That is something that you can actually do virtually, online, reaching out to your donors, whether it's email or phone calling, however that is. You could work with your volunteers, not in person, mind you, but organize some of your volunteers to organize calling some of your donors or some of your major donors, and not just to ask for money. Again, the point is letting people know, letting your support base know that you are still around. So expanding your donor base in sharing your story about who you are, what you do, that you are still here, how can you help, but it's also a prime opportunity to get to know your donors. For those of you who have segmented your donor base and who are experts at this, you know that the more you know about your donors, the more opportunities you have to get to for your donors to support you. And typically, the more you know about your donors, the easier it is to get bigger donations from them. The reason being is because then you can tailor and target your fundraising for the interests, needs of your donors. So this is a great time to survey your donors. Now, when I say survey, I don't mean, call them up and put them through the, Spanish Inquisition, but it's a great time to just say, check in on them. How are you doing? Is your employer still open? Really, where do you work? Simple questions like that you might not already have in your database, right? But where they work is very important, because how are you going to take advantage of maybe a corporate matching type of program if you don't even know where your donors work, who their employers are? So it's a great time for you to start collecting information to put into your donor base on your donors. Another thing is to think about earned income. This is another thing that nonprofits often don't look at. I always say, especially since I work a lot with smaller organizations, but any organization can do this, is as the leaders of your organization, you are the experts in your cause, right? As experts, you can offer training, you can offer advice, and you can get paid for that, and that can be considered earned income for your organization. If you find that your organization was able to had a great turnaround and taking a physical event, and now you had to do it virtually because of the times we're in, but it was still a great success. Oh my gosh, you could offer some type of online virtual training for that. Think about it. How many people on this training right here paid $25 just to hear, right? People are interested in information. Information is always marketable in good times and in bad times. And so think about ways that you could have an earned income, and think about ways of maybe leveraging that aspect of your organization. The other thing that you want to think about, if you have not thought about it before, is you need to make it easy for people to give to you, as easy as possible. And so now that we are in this technology age, it is so easy for people to give. The obvious thing that everybody should have is a donate button. I know that seems really obvious. Everybody has a donate button on their website, right? Do you have a donate button on your Facebook page? Do you have a donate button anywhere else? Is there a link to donate on any of your other social media channels? But what you might not also think about in terms of that ease of giving are easy ways that people can give to you. One of those things are just all those types of online platforms. Like, for example, Amazon Smiles. When somebody buys something from Amazon and you are signed up with Amazon Smiles, then that means that money can go directly to your organization. Now, true enough, it might not be a huge amount, but in this time, every little bit helps. And if you are not utilizing those types of methods for bringing in money, this is the time to do it. Everybody is on Amazon right now, right? Because nobody wants to go out. People can't go out, so they are ordering more than they have ever done before. And if you are on Amazon Smiles, you can get, they can donate a portion of, however it works out to your organization. Another thing, I don't have the technology. Again, obviously you saw how long it took me just to share my screen, but I've seen technology where you can actually text in a donation over your phone. I don't know how it works, but I've seen it work. Find out about it. If you're familiar with it, if you're not familiar with it, find out about it. Who does that? Is that a technology that is accessible to you? Make it easy for people. Crowdfunding, right? Crowdfunding typically has never really, it has a very low threshold for how much money crowdfunding can bring in. However, during times of crisis, again, people are looking for ways to help, and crowdfunding might be the right mode, the right vehicle for the right time is a crowdfunding campaign that maybe they've only, generated maybe a few $100s before. This might be the time to try a crowdfunding campaign. There are all those other types of campaigns. I know that it's Kohl's, the store Kohl's, they had something, and I think it was called Kohl's Cares, which was their charitable arm, and where organizations can buy cards, gift cards, but then at a low cost, but then sell them to donors, whatever, at cost or at a higher cost, is a way of raising money, and also a way of getting customers for Kohl's as well. But there's lots of organizations have things like that. You just need to find out what is the technology that is available to you in order to build out your plan B, C, D, and E. And I guarantee you it's all going to be around those creative collaborations with other organizations, other international organizations doing work that you're doing, or by really expanding your donor base and really finding out who your donors are, reaching out to your donors and letting them know that you are still here. So those are just some quick things that you need to do in this time. What I find so important, I know that I'll probably really be dating myself when I give this analogy, but if any of you are history buffs out there, during World War II in Great Britain, you had Neville Chamberlain, and you had Winston Churchill. And at the time when the Nazis were coming into power, Neville Chamberlain was the leader that just said, oh, you know what, let's just try to work with them. Let's just see what happens. And he was a wait and see kind of a leader. And Churchill said, we are not going to wait and see. We are not going to wait and see. We're going to fight this fight, and we are going to win. That is the attitude that you need to have in times of crisis. It's not a wait and see type of attitude and see where we are. We'll reassess 6 months from now. You might not be around 6 months from now, right? This is a time to fight, to be that leader, to stand up and to let people know that your organization is here, it's here for them, and that you will still be here fighting your fight, fighting your cause on the front lines of your cause, wherever your cause is. So thank you, and I will open it up for questions.
Pamela, thank you so much. Don't you just wish Pamela could come to your house every morning, get you out of bed, get you motivated to go do fundraising? It's such an optimistic look, and really what we need right now, I think, in this time of crisis, just to really have this ability to have a path forward and be motivated to do it. So thank you so much for those words. We are going to take questions now from all of you. Again, type it into the Q&A box at the bottom, not the chat, but go to the Q&A and I will verbally ask Pamela the questions. And I can even start with a couple of questions that I've had too. I mean, you've given a lot of this advice of being creative, but there are organizations that are not doing global health, because we do think that the global health organizations might have an easier job relating to the topic at hand and being able to fundraise. But there are some nonprofits that have asked me, should we just sit this one out for a month or two? And you mentioned this a little bit, but could you talk about that a little bit more? And if they feel like they're doing school education, for example, and the schools are all closed, so should they just sit it out so that they can rebound in several months maybe, or what would you advise?
Yes, and my advice is absolutely not. This is not the time to sit anything out. Because there's no guarantee. This is a unique opportunity. I mean, a unique time that we're in. I can't imagine when our nation was in, or when the world was in this type of a situation, since probably in history it probably was the influenza pandemic of 1918. I mean, you know, it's that unique. 100 years, something like this hasn't happened. You cannot afford to sit back. So say, for example, if you were in education, think of some creative ways of engaging students, engaging teachers, right? And one thing also, Kristen, you had said that, yes, Global Washington, a lot of your members are doing work overseas. The thing about this pandemic, it's not an American pandemic. It's a worldwide pandemic. One of the things you can do, as I talked about leaders getting out there and showing their donors that you're still there, is what's happening to your partners on the ground where you're working. Have you reached out to them? They are going through the exact same thing. I think COVID has hit just about every single country in the world. So guaranteed that wherever your partners are, they are affected as well. And as we all know, any disease or any virus is going to hit vulnerable populations most. For a lot of your work, you are working with vulnerable populations. So whereas, you know, here in America, where people are healthy, have access to health care, there are a lot of people who are healthy enough to where they could have COVID and not even show symptoms. I guarantee you that that's going to be less of that in vulnerable populations around the world, that the disease will be much more devastating based on just the general health of the population. So this is the time to reach out to your partners. How are they doing? Find out about that. Let your donors and supporters know. If they're having a hard time, let your donors and supporters know. Maybe this is the time to do a targeted campaign to help out your partners on the ground. So it's not the time to be insular, to just think about hanging on and just, you know, think about us, we, you know, me, we, and us three. This is the time to be looking outward. How are your partners on the ground doing, and being creative about what can you do to just to switch up and to rethink how you deliver services in a new way.
That's so great. Yeah. And one thing just to add, I've heard from some donors that they're having a hard time finding reliable news sources on what's going on in certain countries. And if you have staff or partners on the ground, that's probably great information to share with their donors. And again, you could say this isn't officially from the government, but we're hearing from our staff there that, you know, the airports have closed and this has happened and this has happened. So I think people are going to shift their attention. Okay, we've got a couple of other questions coming in. One is, do you have suggestions for virtual events, examples of successful virtual fundraisers and common pitfalls? And Becky wrote this. And Becky, I'm going to put in the chat room too that we did a webinar with Upaya on a virtual fundraiser they did that you can watch as well. But Pamela, do you have any thoughts?
Actually, you know, that was great. I was actually going to refer to you, Kristen, to talk about that UPI event. I think that is a prime example of a quick pivot and a quick shift on getting something done. So why don't you go ahead and share for those maybe who don't know about that?
Yeah, just briefly, Upaya Social Ventures is a nonprofit that works in India, and they had their annual fundraiser already planned, and it was planned on March 7th, I believe. And on a Saturday, the Monday before that event, they decided to flip it to a virtual gala. And it was absolutely unique in what they did. And they have it, I think, maybe still up on their website, or again, I'll share the webinar. But they quickly got the software. They started doing little videos on their phone to post. And it became a 5-day campaign that rolled out certain things. But the one key of that is that they already had been cultivating their donors so well that at that time, the table captains could have easily just said, oh, great, I don't have to go to the event. I'll just give you money. I mean, again, they
Right.
had so much behind this. And the other caveat with Upaya is that they did do this March 7th. That was really early on in this whole process. So donors were still very focused on supporting nonprofits, as they would always do. Now, I think donors might be thinking about their own portfolios a little more, and it's been different recently, but it was a huge success. They set a goal of 200,000 for the virtual gala, and they raised 280,000.
Right.
So huge success. Oh, thank you. Somebody posted it.
And Kristen, I will just say that idea of cultivating, they obviously cultivated their donors before they gave. That is key for any successful fundraising event. You have to cultivate those donors. So this is a great time to start cultivating donors. Why? All your donors are sitting at home right now. They're not going anywhere. You have a captive audience. So think about ways that you can start cultivating those donations. So even if you don't have the expertise or the technical assistance or the capacity to springboard into a virtual event right now, and you absolutely you have no choice but to postpone your event to the fall, then this is your opportunity to cultivate your donors so that once you have that event, you already know where people are, what their donations are, and you are priming them for that event. You need to pump up those efforts now.
That's great. So we have a couple more questions. This is from Stephanie, which is really interesting that her organization has shifted programming to respond to COVID. And she's worried they might be duplicating similar efforts, such as food and rent assistance by other nonprofits. And she's starting to worry that they have some mission creep, some scope creep, that's giving way to some of their proven programs already. So do you have advice on that?
Well, what I would say about this, it goes back to that these are times, different times, and you have to change with the times. And the examples that I have are, say, for example, I can't think of the company right now, but they make gin, I think. But they, we're going to lay off all the workers. So they're like, well, gosh, instead of making gin, since we can't do that, why don't we make hand sanitizer? Hand sanitizer, totally off their radar, not something that they do, right? but it was a way of pivoting and doing something in this crisis. So, for example, many of you are working overseas right now. So say, for example, you are building schools overseas, right? Maybe now might be the time you could partner with an organization or do it yourself about maybe providing menstrual kits for girls overseas, right? It's not something that you do, but where you are responding to a need, right? And so you want to think about that. So the person here who said, we're creeping into, gosh, we're doing things that other nonprofits are doing. I think that all good work in times of crisis is needed, right? It is needed and it is helpful. And now is not the time to say, oh, well, I'm going to let somebody else do that. Continue to do that. Again, what you do today will be reflected in your support tomorrow. The fact that maybe you have never been involved in food collection or distributing face masks before, guarantee you when we are past this, people will remember that you were the one that were helping their community with food. You were the one that stepped out to help with face masks or whatever it is, even though it's not in your scope. That's what people will remember, the fact that you stepped up to the plate and took a leadership role to do something to help. That's what people remember, and they will remember it in their pocketbooks, and you will see it in your bottom line once we're all said and done.
No, that's great advice. One exercise I've been going through with some of the executive directors is looking at your core principles. And again, your core principles probably say something about serving your community. And again, it's not mission creep if you are serving your community. So
right.
Again, it's subtle. But again, I think you can figure out like even the gin manufacturing, it's not flipping completely around, it's using some of your core assets as well, right? So no, that's great advice. Here's another question from Jen, who works at Village Reach. How do you suggest messaging right now at a time when people might feel nervous about their own economic prospects, especially with major donors?
Right. And the message that I would put out there is the one that we keep hearing everywhere. We are all in this together, and that we as an organization are here for you. That's the key message, because people are scared and panicking and don't know. They need that comfort. They need that reassurance. And when chaos happens, people look for, where's the solid rock that's not moving, that's not in chaos? What can I hang on to that is similar, familiar, right? That's what they're looking for. And needs to be your message, especially as an organization, is that we are here. And we are here for you. And so I actually think that you organizations should think of ways of being a service to their community, of giving back in some way. Now that might be giving back by saying, if you're trying to figure out where our resources and you don't know, we're going to keep those posted on our website. So check back to our website daily, right? And post, a matter of just posting something up there. If you have a newsletter and you're sending stuff out, put information in there, not just about your organization, but something that can help, that people are looking for. They're looking. And again, I just gave that example of really, kind of simple example of where can you find toilet paper? What store has toilet paper in stock, right? Something like that, because that's what people are looking for. So people are looking for you to help. And that is your message, and a message of how can we help you? Let us know. And the thing is, you won't always be able to respond, but the key is you are asking, and it causes engagement for your donors to respond back to you. And that's what you need in this time. You need to think of ways of how are we going to keep our donors engaged? How long is this going to go when we are off of their radar? We are not, at the front of their thoughts. Keeping them engaged in some way. So even putting that on your social media posts, we're here. We care about you. How can we help you? How can we support you in this difficult time? Is that by posting resources? We can do that. Or something, something like that. but definitely the message is we're all in this together, and we are here right with you, and we will be here afterwards.
Oh, that's great. That's really good. I've got a question too. You mentioned about collaborating with other organizations, even doing a joint fundraiser. And I imagine a lot of us in nonprofits think that that sounds really hard, and that this time too, you're trying to prove you're relevant. And again, it's not, I hate the idea of pitting nonprofits against each other, saying I'm more relevant than another. But do you have any tactical advice, is what I'm asking, on a joint fundraiser about sharing revenue, sharing cost? Do you have advice on that?
The thing about it is that you're still, you know, something like that. It wouldn't be necessarily we're combining all of our donations. You have your supporters and we have our supporters. The key is combining mostly the resources. At this time, it's going to be virtual. So maybe somebody has a technical assistance that you don't have. Right? But you can have a joint fundraiser. So what happens is that however it works out, whether it's a site that you go to or whatever, there's a donate button for their organization and donate button for your organization, right? So wherever those donations go, they still go to the same organization that has the support. The collaboration comes in with, we're not able to do it on our own, or maybe somebody else can't do it on their own, or we could do it on our own if we just had some extra capacity, some extra help, some volunteers. And another organization, well, I've got some volunteers, but I don't have the technical assistance. That's the type of collaboration that I'm talking about, not necessarily sharing those resources and like, okay, now we've got this whole pool of money, how do we split it up? No, but it's more of like if you have a virtual and online event, whether that is a campaign, it's like, look, we are partnering together, organization A and organization B, and we are, going out there because we know that, our work is, whether it's similar or whatnot, but again, you have your separate messages, but you're just doing it together at the same time. I hope that kind of clarifies. Yeah. And I am not a technical person, mind you, but the idea, think of that ways to collaborate. The key is that to avoid sitting back doing nothing because you think we don't have the capacity, our workforce is all at home, we can't do this. Well, maybe you could still work out a way to do it by collaborating or partnering with another organization.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. Some of this online software for auctions, it's you buy either a month subscription or maybe a year subscription, so maybe you're not using it. I don't know how you could end up sharing, but I think you could share subscriptions to look into that. There's another question.
One other thing I would say about that, or it's just a matter, again, of when I think of sharing, it's like helping another organization put on their fundraiser. It's not about you. It's you helping them put their fundraiser on. And then when it comes time to do your fundraiser, they come up and support you. That's what it's about, sharing. And this is not the time to just, dig in. Your mission should always be reaching out, not reaching in.
Right. No, that's great advice. And the Global Washington Network is great for that. Again, the Upaya webinar, if you look at that, they're sharing all the information they know. So right. It's a great network to do that. So another question about contingency planning in terms of budgeting. How, as a development director of an organization, or if the person doing fundraising, how do you project revenue for the rest of this year? Do you right now tell your CEO that it's not going to be what I expected and ramp it down? Or how do you even figure out what it's going to be this year?
Right. Well, the key is you have to get a plan in place for what you're going to do. It's not just, if you just sit back, then nothing is going to happen. So what you need to do is get a plan, and your plan is probably going to look a lot different than it was before. Every to meet any budget, you're going to need a funding strategy. How are you going to get that budget? How many individual donors do you need? How many grants are you going to go after? How many major donors are you going to go after? You have to have a plan in place. Well, in the same way, you need a plan in place now for what you are going to do. And so what should change is not that is that you automatically just, oh, well, let's just scale back so we don't have to do as much. No, it's to rethink your plan, your funding strategy. So whereas maybe before you weren't focused maybe on building out individual donors as part of your funding strategy to meet your budget, maybe that's something that you need to add into your budget now. Maybe before you weren't going to maybe focus as heavily on I don't know, grants, or maybe you only had a couple of grants that you're going to go on and you were focusing on some other areas as well. Maybe now you need to expand the amount of grants that you're going for, or looking at maybe organizations offering grants that maybe you haven't thought of before. And so that's what has to change. Your funding strategy has to change on where you are going, the pools that you are going to look at for this. And that is going to require some brainstorming, absolutely. That, get as many, bright people in the room as you can, or online as you can, and brainstorm that through. Because yes, that's what the pivot needs to be. Is where are we going for the money? And again, part of, and this is why I am such a proponent of diversification. If your main idea for raising money for your organization is having an event, you are going to be stuck right now, because everything you think about is like, well, we can't have an event, so now what do we do? And you are tying your own hands, because you are not, you've kind of eliminated all the possibilities that aren't surrounding or aren't anchored by an event. Events are very cost intensive, they're time intensive, and you need to think of other ways of generating revenue. And so for those organizations that are very, very event heavy or event centric, this, I guarantee, will be a more challenging time for you, because it's going to require some thinking that maybe you really don't have, or that you haven't utilized. I say you do have it. You absolutely do have it. You may just not have. It's probably a muscle that you need to work out a little bit more on thinking how to bring in money apart from just hosting an event. There are other ways as well.
Yeah, and if it's an event with individuals, it is really about cultivating those individuals, right? And it's, again, like you said, giving calls. Jen from Village Reach is on this, and I know her CEO spent days and days early on calling all of their major donors, checking in, and again, maybe not asking for money right at that time, but again, it's all about, it's going to take more time, because it's, what you call bird by bird, right? You'd have to do the steps differently rather than gathering everyone together, but it's all about relationships and cultivating.
It absolutely is. I've used this term before. It's about friend raising, not fundraising. It's about cultivating those relationships. The relationships are what turn into donations. And so so just a phone call can pay off in the long run. Maybe you're thinking, oh my gosh, but I need some money now. Why am I going to take the time to spend all that extra time calling people when I need to be figuring out how to get money? To me, they go hand in hand, and that you're not looking for the one-off donation. You are looking for that supporter who's going to support you today, tomorrow, a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now. And that will only happen if you cultivate that relationship and build and grow that relationship. And that might mean just making a phone call to check in to see how they're doing.
That's so great. Well, we're at the end of our time. This was jam-packed information through 1 hour that has been so helpful to me, and I think to everyone. I've seen a lot of in the chat thank yous and how helpful it is. we hope our goal for Global Washington with these webinars is that you get something today that you can implement tomorrow or this afternoon. So I really hope you got some of those golden nuggets that you can take and implement. I'm confident that you did. Pamela, as always, again, I wish you could call me every morning and give me that motivation to do this fundraising.
Work that out, maybe.
I know, right? Just a daily, you know, on Facebook or something. It's so great. So thank you so much for spending your time with us. Again, we will do a follow-up email to everyone participating. We'll give you links to Pamela's website. If Pamela, she had some simple slides, but again, maybe that's what I need every morning, bring up a couple of those slides that we'll share with all of you. So thank you all for joining. Again, we'll be doing more of these. Go to the Global Washington website under events and let us know if there's certain topics you want us to do. Pamela, any last words?
My only last words are, I know that you can do this. I believe in you, and it'll all work out. This too shall pass. I know we've heard it. It sounds so corny and cheesy to say it again, but it's true. And as we, are thinking when we are in a panic mode, it stifles our creativity, but just some deep breaths and just to settle in and just get those creative juices flowing, and it'll be fine.
That's great. Thank you so much, Pamela. Thank you all for joining. Stay healthy, stay safe. And again, let us know if Global Washington can help you in the future. Thanks so much, everyone.
Great.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.